All right. Hello and welcome back, brothers and sisters, and let us continue the second phase of the educational or discussion sessions that we promised in the Christmas Eve. On the Christmas Eve, we've done the first wave of the basic four pillars. Now we are wanting to at least complete the five basic sessions of the wave principle, which can help you determine with confidence a few good trade setups. All right. And all right, I'll make that announcement a bit later, but let's focus on the five sessions now. Let's take some space here. Please remember, Elliott wave is not is quite deep, but these five uh, are the basic and the most important patterns. If you can identify these, most of the things are done. Those who are joining fresh, if you are live, I don't think so that you must be live right now, because it's not a scheduled live session. But by any chance, if you are there or you're watching the recorded version, uh, thank you so much for your support and warm welcome. You'll find all the educational sessions and the daily live sessions, including individual wave counts, at all the different playlists. Uh, Feel free to have a look at them, and also give me your comments or questions if you have any. It does mean a lot to me. We've done the basic two sessions. The first one we've discussed is uh, basic structure, and the second one is the fractal nature. I hope and I believe that you have gone through these videos. What we intend to produce now or discuss now on are the five basic patterns. Uh, Principally, we are going to discuss about motive and corrective waves types or their patterns, right? And out of those patterns are number three in the sequential order. We would want to touch base with impulses, impulse waves and their properties or guidelines, diagonals and their properties or guidelines. Those two are types of motive waves, and then we'll touch base with flats. Number six, the zigzags. And number seven, uh, the triangles. Alright, so I would like to let's begin with the impulse waves in this session, and then we'll touch base and follow on with the diagonals, flat, zigzag, and triangles. Alright, let's get started. By any chance, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel and if you're viewing these videos, please do take some time and subscribe, because I'm soon taking a decision on the Telegram and the YouTube with a few unwanted incidents that I saw that are happening yesterday. I laugh a lot. This is how things are going around across. Uh, it was difficult to understand why these things are happening, but these things do happen. So I'm going to take a decision about the Telegram channel Harsh Japee and the YouTube. Uh, by any chance, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube, this is the time to do so. YouTube is going to be for forever, and it's going to be for free. I'm still to take a confirmed decision on the Telegram channel that was started with a noble intention of helping or genuinely helping traders and creating a traders community. It is being taken some it's being taken off some advantage. So let's see. God bless everyone, and I'll get some divine inspiration very soon. This is the basic what I've drawn here is a pictorial representation of an impulse wave. I would like to remind you that impulse waves are a part, or I would say type, the first important type of the motive waves. And by any chance, if you have forgotten what are the motive waves, uh, motive waves are those which move with a clear intention or a motive. Alright, they want to push market in a particular direction. Could be up, could be down. Alright, and as far as the theory goes, that's the main reason why it is five waves. Three waves could be a sideways action, two waves means nothing, and precisely that's the reason why it is five waves, and it is labeled as one, the numbered phase, I would say, then labeled as numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm not showing the other corrective waves right now. We'll touch base with the corrective waves a bit later. You already know the main property of a corrective wave is to counter the motive waves, and they normally unfold into three subwaves labeled as A, B, and C. Mostly there are three waves labeled as A, B, and C. In some cases, especially the triangles, they unfold into five waves. But the subwaves are again three. Alright, so that is a pictorial representation of an impulse. And there are a few guidelines that you would like to keep note of when you're trying to find out an impulse or trying to work upon an impulse, trying to identify an impulse. And they are: the first one would be wave 2 does not drop below wave 1 or the head of wave 1. This is a rule. So it should be followed meticulously. If it is dropping below the head of wave 1, that's the first indication that we're still not even beginning to form an impulse wave. Alright, so that's the first step. The second identification is that out of waves 1, 3 and 5, right, wave 3 is the longest, mostly, right. If it is not the longest, the second rule says it all. It can never be the shortest. What does this mean? It's very clear, but still I would like to spend some time. Let's say most of the cases, wave 3, you will, if you understand the psychology of wave 3, that is where the participation is the maximum. We talk about overall participation, because prices are moving just because of the mass psychology or mass public psychology. Participation is the maximum in wave 3, they say. That's the reason most of the time you're going to find out that you're going to witness that wave 3s are the most powerful waves within the 5 waves impulse or a motive structure. All right. But at the same time, it's not a rule. It's not been defined as a rule that it has to be. But the rule which has been defined is that if it is not the longest one or the largest one, it will never be the shortest one. So this understanding of rule will help you or help us all to label the charts properly. Alright, let's say this wave I was not terminated there, but if I terminated it here, alright, somewhere here, and then a drop and then a rise, you would not label that wave 3, right? That is again due to another rule as well, which we are going to discuss it further. But you would understand that, alright, that's not a wave 3 which is forming, it's actually a part of wave 3 is unfolding into 5 sub-waves, and you label it as lower degree wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4 and wave 5, something like that. Alright, it's going to be very clear when we begin doing case studies or as I said, the 9 AM Eastern Standard sessions from the next week now, 15th of January. It's a holiday season here, 15, 16, 17, all the kite flying festivals, 13, 14, 15. But I'll see to it that at least the 2 live sessions are taken, and if there's any other issue, then I'm always going to be online on the YouTube. Alright, so coming back to where we are, wave 3, let's say wave 1 is 70 points, alright, and then wave 3 is 65 points, so it is lower than the first wave, right? Now you can take it for granted that the 5th wave will not exceed 65 points. If it does exceed, then it's doing something else. This rule, this way, it really helps us to trade properly, or to keep our stop losses properly if you're wanting to trade aggressively. Alright, so within the first, third and 5 waves, third is the longest most of the time, but it cannot be the shortest. Most of the time wave 3 would also be an impulse. This is not a rule, but you can most of the time witness that the third wave is also an impulse. That is, you can clearly identify wave 3 or subdivide wave 3 into 5 waves. As a general guideline, we all know that waves 1, 3 and 5, they subdivide into 5 waves, but specifically the rule says that wave 3 would be an impulse itself. Right, so this is the rule for an impulse wave. Don't get mixed up between motive and impulse. Impulse is a type of motive waves and motive wave, and what we are discussing are the rules and properties of an impulse wave. All right, now a very important rule follows. Wave 4 never would enter the territory of wave 1. These are the four general rules or guidelines, whatever you call, to understand an impulse wave. Now I'm going to touch base with the last rule. What it says is, let's say that's the termination point of wave 4, okay? It says that it would never enter the territory of wave 1. Now there is an exception written by or corrected. Sometimes in the future segment you might see a spike coming and touching the first wave territory and then pulling it back. It happens sometimes in the futures market. The cash market, it doesn't happen. That's what it is. It says, but okay. But mostly you'll find that fourth wave would not enter the territory of wave 1. That is, if you have a high at a certain point of the termination point of wave 1, prices would not come near or touch that high. They would reverse before that. That's the property of wave 4. Now, another practical trading guideline, wave 4 would ideally, I would say, it's an ideal environment. It's not a rule though, but it's a guideline that the fourth wave will terminate at the 38.2% Fibonacci support of or the 38.2% retracement of the third wave. This is the Fibonacci correlationship. All right, I'm here to discuss the practical aspect of trading Elliott wave patterns. This is what God's grace is necessary to understand. Okay, you don't need to read so many theories, and okay, if you're interested, yes, definitely you should read, and it's nothing wrong. But the practical way to deal, these are the points that if you remember these points, your trading life would certainly improve and become easier. All right, so keep in mind, brothers, wave 4 terminates at the 38.2% Fibonacci support of the third wave. Normally, it might go deeper sometimes if the third wave is really extended. It could find support at a 50% or a 61.8% as well, but it will never overrule the fourth rule, override the fourth rule. All right, even if it is finding support at a 61.8%, you will see that it remains above the territory of wave 1. Normally it is 38.2%. That's not a rule. It can go deeper, but it will still find its termination somewhere ahead of the first wave. All right, ahead of the first wave. If it is not doing, it's doing something else. Right? These are the checkpoints. All right. Then fifth wave terminates normally the distance traveled by waves 1 to 3. If that is the distance traveled by waves 1 to 3, bottom of wave 1 and the termination point of wave 3, uh, fifth wave would ideally terminate at a 38.2% Fibonacci extension of that distance traveled. Sometimes it may go up to 61.8% as well. These are the Fibonacci correlationships which you would want to keep note of when you are trying to trade. Okay, it's a trading point of view. Now the last point that I want to discuss is how do you trade this, because we finally want to apply these into our trading life. Okay, so what do you think, where should our first trade be along with the stop loss and the target? Oh, the third correlation I forgot. Wave 3 terminates at a 161.8% extension of wave 1. Right, wave 3 terminates at a 161.8%. Wave 4 terminates normally at a 38.2% of wave 3, and wave 5 terminates at a 38.2% extension of the distance traveled by waves 1, 2 and 3. Alright, so 3 Fibonacci correlationships between the waves that would help us find out the entries and exit points. And wave 2, the only rule that applies for the wave 2 Fibonacci correlationship, it can take 38.2, 50 or 78, 61 or 786%. Bottom line, it should not drop below the head of wave 1. Is that okay? So all Fibonacci correlations discussed, that helps you to find out the entries and exit. Now, where do you think our first entry point should go? The first entry point goes at the termination point of the second wave, where this is where you end up buying the market, and you place your stop loss below the head of wave 1. All right, below the head of wave 1. Head is the starting point in our case. So that's the first trade. Then you can take it all the way towards the termination point of the third wave, which is the 161.8% extension of wave 1. Make a habit of coming slightly ahead of the 161.8%. All right, so that's the first entry. You took profits there, come out please. The second entry point comes at the termination point of wave 4. Please remember, it is not coming at the beginning of wave 1. It is very difficult for us for anybody to that would be a blind trade. I mean, this will not be a blind trade. If you correlate with the ABCDs that we discussed, that is our C point, right? Wave 2. But the wave principle gives us more precise wave counts, and it gives us more control and more objectivity where you're entering and exiting. That's the only reason, nothing else. If you just do an ABCD count following your Fibonacci and the basic 4 pillars, you'll be very fine with that. No problems, brothers. Right, second entry point is that wave 4. Okay, now where do you place your stop loss? It is up to you. You have either you place your stop loss below the second wave, the termination point of wave 2, but technically, even if you place your stop loss a few points below the high point of wave 1, it will suffice. You're not wrong at all. In fact, you're technically right. by placing a stop loss just below the head of wave 1. Why? Because if it's an impulse, it will not drop below or it should not drop below the head of wave 1. It should not enter this territory. Right, so you've got the first entry point here, the second entry point at the termination point of wave 4. If you are an aggressive trader, the third entry point you will take at the termination point of wave 5. This is an aggressive trading. Right, you have to be very confident about the potential wave counts. You need to count the sub waves properly, and you need to be very confident about the potential termination point of wave 5, and then you can enter short in anticipation of the first wave of the counter trend, okay, or the corrective move. So that is the summary of, or a practical summary of, an impulse wave. Let's quickly revise. Wave 2 does not drop below the wave 1, the head of the wave 1. Out of waves 1, 3 and 5, wave 3 is the longest most of the time. It can never be the shortest. Please remember that. Mostly wave 3 would also be an impulse. That's fine. And wave 4, these 3 points, 1, 2 and 4 are very important for us to remember, brothers. Wave 4 never would enter the territory of wave 1. And the Fibonacci correlationships, wave 2 can take any Fibonacci support. Bottom line should not drop below the head of wave 1. Wave 3 is 161 extension of wave 1. Wave 4 terminates normally at a 38.2% of wave 3 retracement. And wave 5 is normally 38.2% of the distance traveled by waves 1, 2 and 3. Sometimes it may go to 61.8% as well. And lastly, you would want to trade the termination point at the beginning of the wave 3. Remember, that's the most powerful and the longest wave, with a stop just below the head of wave 1. Second entry point you would want to enter at the beginning of wave 5. On the termination point of wave 4 you can call. And the third entry point, which is aggressive, place a stop below the head of wave 1. The third entry point, which is aggressive, you can go short at the termination point of wave 5. Alright, brothers and sisters, mostly this summarizes the first of the 5 major important patterns that one must know and understand about the wave principle. I'll be doing the other 4 as well right after a few seconds of completing this. And yes, the normal UK live session begins at 2:30 AM Eastern. And if you are still not subscribed, as always, as a declaration, do subscribe. If you liked, press the like button, and don't forget to share. I mean, that is where the love spreads. I mean, sharing is not going to take anything from us. I repeat, brothers and sisters, if you share, it's only going to increase. That's a law of nature, whether you believe it or not. Don't be taken for granted though sometimes. But keep this principle in your life. If you share your knowledge, it's never ever going to diminish. I mean, this is a basic principle. I mean, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 participants handled, and I'm very happy, and I'm growing actually. This is a revision for me, a live example of sharing is never going to take anything away from you. That's God's words to us. Only thing that we forget sometimes. Alright, so let's bring this first session to a pause, and I'll be back again with the second video very shortly, just after a few minutes of completing this one and having posted and shared. All right. So, until the next session, take care and God bless, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.